Today, we're going to talk about and we're going to name a feeling that so many different people have been experiencing in the world lately. And I've seen also playing out through many different teams and organizations. Many people have been having this feeling of feeling drained, feeling more lethargic than ever, in a bit of a lull, languishing. And in fact, that's a term that was coined by the sociologist years ago, Corey Keyes, when he referred to this idea is a sense of stagnation and a feeling of emptiness, feeling of muddling through your days, looking at your life or your work through a foggy windshield. You're not sure where it's going or what is coming up next along the path since so much has been happening. There's an opportunity for us to step back and recognize that it has been a different and difficult year, and so there are many people within our teams or our families or our friend groups or throughout our companies and organizations that may be feeling many different ways along this spectrum of mental health. What impact is this going to have on the mental health of us all? Welcome back to The Thermostat with Jason Barger. If you're currently on a commute, a walk, or just a micro break in your day, glad you're making time to step back, to think, and to reflect on the next steps on your journey. I've never been more convinced. The best leaders and team cultures in the world are the ones that make time to step back and calibrate their thermostat. I hope today's conversation leaves you feeling grounded and inspired. Now let's dive into today's topic to engage our minds and hearts in order to authentically lead and create compelling cultures wherever we are in the world. Hello, everyone. It's Jason, and welcome back to the Thermostat Podcast. Wherever you are and however you are coming to the podcast today, welcome back. Glad you are here. My hope, as always, as you know, that this is a place for you to a space in your day, in your week, in your month to step back, to be a place where you're able to step back and think, to be filled with some positive thoughts, and to just meet you wherever you are along your journey. I am more convinced of this than ever, especially in the world that we live in today, that authentic leadership and creating compelling cultures are needed more than ever in the world today. I believe this, that teams, organizations, businesses are playing an enormous role in the world right now of creating spaces that bring out the best in all of us, have the opportunity to help meet us where we are emotionally, and also help bring people together to talk, to listen, and to grow as leaders and as the cultures that we want to create. So thank you for everybody who's been a part of this journey from the beginning. And if you're new to the podcast, thank you for jumping in. I wonder if you'll do me a quick favor. If you are willing to do if you're listening to this, then I hope you're willing to do a quick favor for me. Take a moment right now, if you're willing to do this, take a moment and step back and rate this podcast. Give it hopefully 5 stars. Hopefully it has lived up to those expectations, or you can help in that way. And also take a moment just to leave a review. If you can leave a positive review of the podcast, these are all the ways in which the algorithms work to help amplify and share these messages further into the world. And so if you are willing to take a moment just to rate the podcast and leave a nice review, I would be more than grateful and appreciate that. I hate asking for that, but that's just the way that this works and how these things are amplified around the world. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for being a part of today's discussion. Today, we're going to talk about and we're going to name a feeling that so many different people have been experiencing in the world lately. You may be feeling it right now, or you may at least be able to recognize the feeling that we're going to be talking about. We're going to be naming that feeling that so many of us have been feeling in the world, especially over the last year. And I've seen also playing out through many different teams and organizations. And certainly, I would also say that I've felt this myself personally at different times along this pandemic stretch. So a feeling that has been emerging with people has certainly, I've noticed it within teams and organizations. And also, I'm not divorcing myself from this idea that there have been different times along the stretch that I've also felt this, bits of this myself personally. But as we're beginning to move into the post-pandemic haul, which what I mean by that is the pandemic isn't over, but it's been going on for so long, and we are hopefully moving as more and more people are being vaccinated, and we're certainly moving to a next stage of this, that the post-pandemic haul, many people have been having this feeling of feeling drained, feeling more lethargic than ever, and a lot of people have reported feeling in a bit of a lull. It's not burnout. I wouldn't say that people would say. I mean, some people certainly would say that they are burned out, and that certainly everything that's happened in the course of the world over the last year has been challenging in so many different ways, and people certainly may feel burned out. But most people, as I'm listening and I'm observing and watching throughout teams and organizations and people that I've had this conversation with, that it's not burnout per se. But it is there has been a feeling of just feeling a bit drained, a bit lethargic, and many people report feeling like they're just in a bit of a lull. So as I've been thinking about this idea, and again, of course, the timing of this is so perfectly, I want to thank the great Adam Grant, if you don't know of his work, you should. He does some amazing stuff. I'm a big fan of the work that he does, but he's an organizational psychologist at the Wharton Business School. He's also an author, and anyway, he's doing a lot of great stuff, and his work I really appreciate and follow. But he recently wrote an article for the New York Times, and he was pointing out, he was bringing a word to the surface that was describing this kind of lull, this drained, this lethargic feeling that many people seem to be feeling in the world right now. And the word that he chose and that he brought to the surface was the word languishing. Languishing. And in fact, that's a term that was coined by the sociologist years ago, Corey Keyes, when he referred to this idea of the term languishing. Languishing, as it is defined, is a sense of stagnation and a feeling of emptiness. Adam Grant describes it as a feeling of muddling through your days, looking at your life or your work through a foggy windshield. And been talking about and again identifying that many people in the world recently and certainly over the last year, that maybe the feeling that they've been feeling is this sense of languishing, a sense of stagnation, a sense of a bit of emptiness, maybe muddling through your days and looking at your life or your work. It just feels like maybe you're looking out a foggy windshield, and certainly you're not sure where it's going or what is coming up next along the path, since so much has been happening, that maybe that feeling that you've had is a bit of looking through that foggy windshield. And so psychologists and physicians, of course, right now are trying to, all around the world, are trying to predict the toll that the pandemic and all that has been happening in the world over the last year. What impact is this going to have on the mental health of us all? And as our brain's detection center, you know, the amygdala, has been on high alert. And so in this time when our brain, in our brain detection center, that amygdala has been so, exposed and on such high alert because of so much happening. This is the part of our brain that deals with fight or flight, that, feeling that we're in the midst of, when we're in the midst of nature of the brain telling us, what kind of energy that we need to require for this particular situation, and that fight or flight mentality. And the energy that it's required for all of us over the last year, with so much happening in the world, it's required us to carry and be in this kind of fight or flight state for so long that psychologists and physicians are wondering, what is that toll that we've all been carrying? What impact is that going to have on all of our mental health? I have no doubt that there will be time in the near future, I'm not sure when, but where there will be power in congregating again, power in bringing your whole team together, your entire company and organization together in one space for that powerful keynote speech, that discussion that has to happen as a team, an entire organization, about leadership and culture and mindset. But until then, we are in a virtual world. And so if I can add value to your team, your company, or organization through a virtual keynote speech, or just helping your team and organization have the conversation that's the currency for change that you need to be having internally, I hope you'll track us down and let us know how we can be helpful at jasonvbarger.com. And so this word, again, comes to the surface that perhaps what many people have been experiencing is this idea of languishing. You know, in psychology, we tend to think about the term mental health as one of two things. Either we are in a deep depression or we are flourishing. And oftentimes, most people may think of it in just those kind of two ways, that either you are depressed or that you are flourishing in this healthy way. And flourishing, of course, is when we are at our best and we're connected to have a tremendous sense of meaning, of mastering something that we're working on, and in a sense that our actions matter to other people. You know, when people, psychologists will tell us that when people feel like they are experiencing a great deal of mental health and are in a good mental state of mind and might be even categorizing themselves as flourishing, then the way they describe themselves is they just feel like they've got a great sense of meaning. They feel like they are mastering their craft or whatever the particular work that they're involved in or who they're trying to be in the world. And also that they have a great sense that their actions and the life and the work that they're putting out in the world, it matters to other people. And that's what people that are flourishing report out. And on the other side of that coin, again, if you think about mental health only in these one of two states, which once again, we're going to break that down and give a different view to that, is that often people think that either I'm, again, in this great state of mental health, or the opposite of that is that I'm in a deep depression. And unfortunately, so many people in the world deal with this kind of deep depression where they feel like they are in a valley. And when they feel at their worst, or psychologists will tell us that oftentimes people that are in this state of darkness and depression, that what they report is they feel despondent. They just feel emotionally and physically and spiritually drained. And oftentimes the feeling that they feel is that their actions and their life and what they're doing doesn't matter to other people. They feel a sense of kind of worthlessness. And so obviously, you know, many people come to this and think about that there are those kind of two opposite ends of the mental health spectrum. And what I'm so grateful for is over the last couple of years that this topic around mental health has become more popular, and there's been a little bit less of a stigma, or at least we're breaking down that stigma, where people are able to talk more candidly and openly about their own mental health. And we're starting to realize that the spectrum of mental health, that it is just that. It is a spectrum. It's not just two different, ends of that, one being flourishing on the positive side and one being that deep valley of deep despair. Is that actually mental health is probably more accurately, as we dive into this and learn from the psychologists and physicians that are telling us this, is that mental health truly is a spectrum, meaning that, yes, those might be the ends of the spectrum, but that most people fall somewhere in between. And certainly over the course of our experiences and our lives, that people kind of move throughout that spectrum. And hopefully we all find our way to the end of the spectrum where we can feel that sense of flourishing and feel certainly healthy. But the reality is that it falls in that kind of spectrum, and that many people experience it very differently. So the space in between the far end of depression and the far end of flourishing, that what Adam Grant was talking about in his recent New York Times articles, may be that what most people have been feeling. Again, we know that there are people out there that, of course, are feeling like they're flourishing. And unfortunately, we also know there are people that are feeling in a deep depression. And if you are feeling in that state recently, I hope you seek help and be willing to speak out and ask for it. But what Adam Grant was identifying is that maybe part of that middle section of the spectrum, or that place in the spectrum where you're not totally unhealthy yet, that maybe there's a spot in there where this idea of languishing is a word to describe a section of that spectrum where you aren't suffering from, that dark mental illness, but you're not the picture of mental health either. That maybe languishing, this idea of languishing, means that it dulls our motivation. Languishing disrupts our focus and tends to lead us to this point where we're just unable to fulfill our tasks. Maybe languishing, again, if it's dulling our motivation or disrupting, psychologists will tell us when you're in that state that it disrupts your focus. And it tends to lead to this point where you're just unable to fulfill tasks or commitments because of that lack of focus. And also, you're just not experiencing the kind of efficiency that you usually would at your work or in your life, and certainly maybe not the energy that you might feel for the different relationships, even the most significant relationships in your life. And so the danger is, of course, and sociologist Corey Keyes, in his research that he did about this idea of languishing, he suggests that people who will experience, this is the point of this where we are right now, is Corey Keyes says that the research shows that people who will experience major depression or anxiety in the next decade, the research shows that the people that may experience that kind of deep depression or anxiety in the next decade, that what the research shows is that it's not the people that are currently experiencing major depression and anxiety, even though, of course, we know that people that are in that space right now, of course, that may continue into the future. But the part of the research that he's saying is that it's not necessarily the people that are currently expressing that major depression, anxiety now that would project into the future, but actually it may be those people that are just currently in this state of languishing. And so mental health, which is such a serious topic and such an important, as we've all been coming through this time of trauma and uncertainty and all the things that if you are somebody who's feeling despondent right now, that maybe this idea of languishing might make sense to you, that maybe you've been feeling a sense of dulled motivation, of lack of focus, of lack of energy around your relationships. And again, you may not be in a depression per se, but you also might not be a total picture of mental health and in that state of flourishing. And so you might be in this state of languishing. And so the idea and the reason why Adam Grant was bringing to the surface is because if you are feeling this sense, which again, I've observed and talked with people across teams and organizations that have had this feeling of kind of languishing lately, that the reality is it doesn't mean it's going to lead to that point of deep depression, but we ought to be aware of it. We ought to be able and be willing to ask for help. And also as leaders that are leading people in our teams and organizations, it's a good thing for us to have on our mind and to be able to be aware of, so that if we have people on our teams that might be in this state of languishing, that we help support, get them help, and also begin to move ourselves into a place of maybe a greater mental health. Author Austin Kleon, I'll bring this up as well. Austin Kleon, whose work I also enjoy, an author who does some really cool stuff. If you want to look into what he does, he offers a different word than Adam Grant. In fact, he comes right out and he says he hates the idea of this word languishing, because he also thinks that, hey, when we begin to give a name to something that we're not really sure about, just giving name to it sometimes suggests that then our mind will go there. The kind of where we look is where we go. And maybe we can talk ourselves into this state that we are languishing more than we actually are. But he offers a different word and says he doesn't like that word languishing, although he's recognizing, again, that we have all been through a lot and that we've been thinking and reflecting, and certainly in this posture over the last year of dealing with all the trauma and the stuff that's been around us. But the word he chooses instead of languishing is he uses the word dormant. And he says that he likes the idea that maybe he's not necessarily languishing right now, but he is dormant. And what he means by that is he loves the metaphor of gardening, and that we as, that gardening teaches us this kind of metaphor for our life and for the creative process and for the work that we do in the world and the relationships we have, that we humans, we also go through these kind of natural cycles of energy and natural cycles of engagement, and that there's times to bloom and there's times to plant and water seeds, and there's times also when we are dormant, which dormant is a term that means a state of biological rest where we are waiting to be activated, a state of biological rest where we are waiting to be activated, where maybe in his line of thinking, and this certainly resonated with me because it may be a combination of both. You may feel like you've been a little bit in that languishing state where you've just been feeling a little dull. You feel like maybe the energy or the focus hasn't been there. A little bit of that just uncertainty has been creeping in. But you also may just feel like you're in a time of dormant, a time of biological rest, where you're stepping back and you're allowing your thoughts and your reflections and waiting kind of to be activated. I mean, this is oftentimes in the creative process, or for us as individuals, as leaders of people, a lot of times where they're looking to us for energy and or guidance, that sometimes even leaders, we need to make sure that we're creating space for that biological rest, to step back and to maybe allow ourselves some time to think and to be dormant for a little while, to prepare ourselves for that which is waiting to be activated. And so wherever you are today, or hopefully any of this at least is resonating with you, and I'm sure even if you haven't been feeling this yourself, I'm sure as you look across your friends, your team, your entire company or organization, or just the people in your life, I'm hoping and guessing that the topic for today resonates with you, because whatever word it is that resonates with you, or whatever that state is that you may feel like you are in, whatever feeling fits best for how you would describe where you are, the reality is we know it's been a different and difficult year in many ways. And so being able to name that we may not be this pillar of mental health, although some people are, and many of us certainly, we all have had times, hopefully, where we've been flourishing and we feel like we're connected to purpose and meaning and a sense that we belong and we're impacting other people. I've been so fortunate to have that feeling for much of my life and feel very grateful for that. And I'm very fortunate that I've never felt that deep depression, darkness at the other end of the spectrum that unfortunately too many people in the world feel. But wherever you might fit in that spectrum today, or how you've been feeling lately, the reality is there's an opportunity for us to step back and recognize that it has been a different and difficult year. And so there are many people within our teams or our families or our friend groups or throughout our companies and organizations that may be feeling many different ways along this spectrum of mental health. And so the topic for today is not meant to be a downer. This is not meant to be a downer at all. In fact, it's just meant to be transparent and honest and open about how all of us may be feeling, and the reality that, of course, because of everything that's happened in the world over the last year, it's natural that we've been feeling this way. And so this is not meant to be a downer. It's not meant to make us panic, but it is about being honest about how we're feelings, about how we individually are feeling, but also to be thinking about and thoughtful about the other people on our teams and throughout our life and work that and to take some time to reflect and be aware of how others might be feeling, and then maybe be able to offer an ability to begin to just be able to name it. Because when we're able to name the feeling, name how we're doing, then we're able to begin to be proactive and productive about what are we going to do with that, and how can we possibly respond for that, where we might fit along that spectrum. Then we can ask the question of what can we do to proactively as individuals, but also as entire teams and organizations, to help breathe oxygen into ourselves, breathe oxygen into us in healthy ways that helps get us in a better mindset, in a better experience, and begin to position the way that we want to think, act, and interact in the world that maybe gets us out of that rut or dullness that we might be feeling. But also, how do we breathe oxygen into other people? As leaders right now, I believe that some of the best work that we're doing is just breathing oxygen into our teams, helping to give them clarity, return to our mission, return to that purpose of why we're gathering, the role that they play, and breathing oxygen into the impact and importance role that we all might play, the clarity around the vision of where we're trying to gather, and really aligning people, breathing oxygen into people about how we're committed to caring for each other, supporting each other throughout our culture as we move forward in trying to accomplish whatever that is that you're trying to accomplish as a team that's greater than you. And research suggests that these habits and the behaviors that we form, that the habits and the behaviors that we form and the mindset of the way we think about things is what helps us move through that time, whether that's that time of languishing or that time of dormancy. The habits and the behaviors and the mindset that we bring and the oxygen that we bring, that we breathe in individually and collectively, this is what helps us then move throughout that state of maybe dormancy or languishing into a healthier state of mind. And so if you're somebody right now who's sitting there thinking of, okay, give me some tangible things. What can I do? What should I stop doing, or what should I start doing? Then here are a couple things. I mean, these aren't all the answers, of course, but oftentimes we as humans, then we need tangible examples. And so some things to stop doing. Psychologists and physicians and researchers would tell us these are things that don't help us in this time of languishing, or in a time where we feel dulled and we feel like maybe there's a bit of emptiness. These are some things to stop doing. One of them is stop checking emails or social media 74 times a day. And again, if you hopefully this resonates with you. If you've ever been somebody, though, when you've been in this state where you lack focus or are distracted or you're feeling this kind of glossed over feeling of emptiness, then oftentimes the behavior, the habit we end up forming is just every time the ding on the email goes out or the notification comes in on social media, is you get in the habit of checking that all the time because your attention isn't on something more meaningful or purposeful. And so we need to break that habit of just constantly checking emails and social media. We need to break negative sleep routines. That so much of the research comes back to the bad habits and or routines we get into regarding our sleep. Break habits of gossip. Throughout teams and organizations and friend groups and even family groups, when people are feeling in a state of dullness and or not the most healthy emotional states, then oftentimes they gravitate towards environments that are more gossipy, talking about other people, projecting your feelings onto other people. So we need to stop and catch ourselves not gossiping and not blaming other people, and to allow ourselves to step back from maybe the current habits or behaviors or routines we're in, and then begin to say, what are the routines that you feel like you've been doing over the last 365 days when you've been trapped in your own house? What are those routines that you need to maybe get out of? You need to shift up a little bit. Some of the routines, again, have been really helpful, and routines help people feel like there's a level of consistency. But there may be some routines over the last 365 days that you've established as you've been in quarantine that maybe have become habits or behaviors that really aren't bringing out the best in you. So step back and reflect on what are those, and let's shift and just stop doing them. And then what is it we can begin to start doing? Again, part of what research tells us is to be able to get clear on, okay, what am I going to stop doing and what is it that I'm going to start doing? Well, one thing we need to start doing is engaging our minds and hearts with the people that were around us, whether that's a significant relationship you're in your life, whether that's your team at work. Again, I've said over and over again, I believe that teams and businesses and companies are actually going to play a greater role than ever in helping everybody navigate their way through the world, because we have the opportunity to engage people's minds and hearts, connect and align a group of people together around a common mission and purpose, or connect people to what's the next project, the next initiative, and how does it matter, and how do we all matter in bringing it to life. And so we need to make sure that, again, the most impactful leaders, teams, and organizations on the planet are the ones that are proactively engaging their people in these kind of discussions. We need to carve out dedicated time that gets us focused not on checking emails and social media every few minutes, but dedicated time that we can give towards something that we care about. Dedicated time to give to each other. So a significant relationship in your life, give yourself the freedom and the ability to really invest in that relationship. Give yourself dedicated time to dive into the craft of whatever it is you're doing, the craft of your business, the craft of your role, the craft that you care about, the art, the music, the whatever it is, the hobby that you have. Dedicated time to dive into the craft of whatever lights you up so that you can bring focus to that rather than something else that's circling in the world. We need to celebrate small wins. So one of the things we need to start doing is we need to start recognizing in our own life, but then also with the people around us, and celebrating the small wins, the small things that of the ways that we see us stimulating progress in our life and our work. We need to start making more time to laugh, more time to dream and vision for the future that we want to be a part of creating. And we need to create new mental stimuli that connects us to our team, to our mission that is greater than us, and to that group of people, to that company, to the relationships, to your family, to your friends, to your partner, to your marriage, to the world, whatever that may be. We need to create those kind of mental stimuli that connects us to each other and to something that's bigger than us. Culture matters. Culture matters. It matters more now than ever. And I'm seeing that across teams and organizations right now, is that more and more places are realizing we need to have a proactive strategy in order to lead ourselves out of this and be thoughtful about the future we're trying to create together. So leaders, teams, and organizations are playing an enormous role right now in the future that we are creating together. I believe it is our leaders, our teams, and our places of employment that are going to help lead the way in helping us raise the bar on our own mental health, raise the bar on our own leadership, our own actions in the world, and also to help us to be co-creators and participants in creating the culture that we want to be a part of. The best leaders, teams, and organizations in the world are doing just that, even at a time when people might be feeling a sense of languishing or dormancy, or even worse than that, depression, and at the very best of that, of flourishing. Wherever you may fall on the spectrum, the best leaders, teams, and organizations are meeting people where they are and breathing oxygen into them to help us all move through this together. So as always, I'll leave you with some questions for your own journey and for you to think about related to this topic. I'd invite you to take inventory of how you've been feeling lately. Take inventory of how you've been feeling lately. What habits or routines might be contributing to that lull that you might be feeling? What habits or routines might be contributing to that lull? Who is it that you can connect with? Who in your life and in your work can you connect with? How can you carve out time to give focus to something in your life, something in your career that matters to you? Carve out time for that special project, that initiative, that hobby that lights you up. And what small wins are available? What are those small wins that you need to recognize, appreciate, and celebrate that are happening around you? Remember, the best leaders, teams, and cultures in the world stimulate progress by recalibrating their thermostat. Recalibrating their thermostat, returning back to that mission, vision, mission of why they do it, vision for where they're going, the values of how we're going to travel together, and then the strategy around what is it we're going to do next. And so the best in the world are stimulating that progress together by recalibrating that thermostat together. Thank you for listening to today's podcast, and I hope the messages and questions stimulate positive change along your path. As always, if these messages resonate with you and add value to your life, I hope you'll help amplify them throughout the world. Please rate, comment, and share on whatever podcast or social media platform you're using. And share this podcast with the people in your life or work who should be part of these conversations. That way, this spirit does, in fact, spread. If these messages or developing leaders and culture would be helpful to your organization, or you have a question or comment about this podcast, please contact us at jasonvbarger.com. And remember, we all are ambassadors for the culture we want to create in our life and work. We have to own the vision we want to be a part of. The future of leadership is you, is me, is us. Be a thermostat.